Hi guys, I thought I'd get on here and continue. I don't feel well, but I woke up today, I couldn't even move. What this does is when you burn someone, see this? There's swelling in my legs, most specifically my stomach, because they target your stomach, your back, your breasts, I said vagina, I had to look up whether you could say that on YouTube, and you can. Look at this. It's all from swelling. I can barely walk. I went yesterday to get some groceries and I was so out of breath. This is how my grandmother, she ended up having open heart surgery because she was so out of breath. She started talking about the burning. It felt like a poker sticks. She had suffered immeasurably. I mean, I moved home and she was 65 years old. She looked great. She had just bought her trailer after all the, pilfering of her investments and different things that she had saved. And she looked great, She said, well, you better get going, Rhonda. Sometimes, I had thought that some of this stuff was my doing. They would cause trouble at jobs. They were over there on Henry Street in the attic walking around. Robin said it was witchcraft. There was no witchcraft. This is what they do to people. And there were people up to my grandmother's trailer breaking things, walking on the roof. Her roof, she had problems, the furnace. Not so much they were walking, but you could sense that there were people in the back. And when I moved in, I lived there about a year. My grandmother wanted me to have the trailer. I lived there for about a year. And the same thing, you always felt like there was someone in the back, and there was like a person back there, a couple people, and there was just ongoing abuse. And I was very, very frightened. And I should have waited a little bit longer to get married, but it was like a whirlwind love bombing that, my new boyfriend was so great and everybody loved him. And, his family didn't come to my grandmother's funeral though, and that should have been a big red flag for me. It was pretty bad. And I should have said, you know what, if you can't, and they all went to funerals quite regularly. But back then I believed the idea that, well, we didn't know her. Yeah, they didn't know her, but they knew her. They knew my family. So I can barely walk down the street. And this was, 5 years ago or so. I was running a 5K. I was training for a 5K. I was in the best shape of my life. And this isn't a medical thing, because I can go outside, I can ride on the bus, I can, when I feel better, when this isn't so bad, the burning stops. It's specific to what's going on in this apartment, what's going on in other apartments. It's the ongoing harassment and abuse, whether it's the noise, whether it's constant problems with the apartment I rent, whether it's 4 moves in 1 year. I've moved repeatedly since this started, and the abuse is related to that. It has nothing to do, like right now, my whole entire stomach, it's in a lot of pain. It's all bloated, distended. My legs are very swollen, my ankles, my back is just, the rolls just hang over my bra strap, because this is how bad this is. This is the horribleness when I saw my sister-in-law for the first time, and after she had suffered all this in the hospital, bloated, distended, fighting for her life. And it was a very quick process because she had been doing wonderful. She had a gastric bypass. She had a part-time job. I think it was waitressing. I'm not quite sure. She had her little daughter, and she was fighting for her life, not only for her life, but her assets, because she should have been entitled for her home, 50-50, her car, different things, but they went right after her, just like they're going after me now. And you go in a very, very short period of time of doing very well to ending up passing away. And this is what happened to my grandmother. In 5 years' time, she was gone. And she talked about this constant burning. It felt like poker sticks. When you go to have a bowel movement, it's just burn, burn, burn. And this goes on all night, every day. Now I can go outside and it stops. So it's not a health thing. My grandmother thought it was something to do with her health. She ended up having open heart surgery. She told me she would have never, ever had she had longer to think about that and she wasn't being tortured, she probably would have never had open heart surgery. And I tended to agree because I did some research on stents in the beginning. And what was done to her was horrible. She was having fingers removed, toes removed. And in the beginning, stents weren't such, they hadn't perfected it just yet. And the same thing with my sister-in-law. I researched gastric bypass. And if you don't have a little bit of counseling at first, whatever addictions you have can exacerbate. So if you're drinking a little bit, which she was an alcoholic, they went around, told her she was alcoholic. She was in and out of bars. I mean, they make up this horrible stuff about you, just like what they're doing to me. The smear campaign is just absolutely, absolutely horrible. This is a very heinous crime. You become confined to your home. Your whole life is just destroyed. And it's not something that happens to you medically. Renee wasn't, she drank, but never to the excess that they were talking about, which is why I went down there and tried to ask and talk to her a little bit about what's going on, and they called the police on me. I am going over on a little time here, so I don't want to get into Renee's story, but it was the same with my grandmother. In 5 years' time, her life had been completely destroyed. Her car, her dog was killed. Yeah, Holly, remember the dress you wore to Mary Alice's? Yeah, I get the joke, the heinous joke. That dress, it was so uncalled for. I didn't understand at the time what it meant. I guess now I do, because my grandmother swore up and down that they did something to her dog, and I felt horrible. Things had happened so quickly when I moved back home. Within 5 years' time, it was just a flood of things with my grandmother. We were going in and out of the hospital with her. We were dealing with constant harassment at her trailer from neighbors, from her own things that were happening to her. And this is the same kind of hell they're putting me through. I haven't been out in a year since this burning started. I can barely walk down the street. I'm winded, the flatulence, the burning. I talk about looking for housing, and I'll get into more of that. People get on my page and say, well, why didn't you check this? Why not? When they put me on the street, I was on $700 a month. A fraction of my assets. I should have been able to resume my career, which is what most people do. I should have had my car, on and on. You have to give people a few basics to go on with your life, and I wasn't allowed to do that. So $700, you can't get an apartment. And if you do get one, it's not going to be that great anyway. And you hope for the best, and you move in and you look around for things and you hope. I did all that on my home. Everything, doors, windows, roof, everything was redone so I could be okay in my in old age. So this idea that you can, these kind of apartments, I mean, you're talking nowadays, there's so many scams out there. There's so many ways that people are scamming. I mean, as soon as I pulled up with the youth hall truck, it was a scam. So we'll continue about looking at some of these apartments if I can, as long as I can. But this ongoing torture towards people is just absolutely one of the most heinous crimes you can imagine, because it's very difficult to talk about without people saying, oh, that sounds crazy, noise harassment or scams in an apartment, or now with this burning. But my grandmother talked about the same thing, and when in 5 years' time she had passed away. And it was the same thing with my sister-in-law. It was a very short period of time that they were saying these horrible, horrible things about her. She was doing great. I mean, at the peak of doing so great, this is what these people do to people. Be safe out there, guys. Take care.